Well, there are some crazy new developments in the David Sabatini case. And if you haven't heard of this case, I understand that because it didn't get nearly as much attention as like a Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard situation, right? But there are some explosive texts that have leaked and DMs and private emails that have leaked through the course of this situation, this evolving situation of competing lawsuits, defamation lawsuits. There are some explosive things that have leaked, and it seems very, very clear. And of course, some of us already suspected this. I already did a video on it, linked to it below. You know, a number of us knew that this was BS and had reasons for thinking that. But now that these actual text messages and private messages have leaked out, showing that the accuser lied about multiple things, including the primary things, whether the relationship was fully consensual, whether she was coerced into it, that sort of thing. BS claims, as it turns out. So I want to talk about this, and if you're not familiar with the case of Dr. David Sabatini, I'm not going to retread the whole thing here because I already did a video on it, like I said. It's linked below, and I'll have it at the end of this video as well. I think those of you, especially who have interest in the Amber Heard Johnny Depp situation, will see that there are actually a number of parallels here. Not all. Dr. Sabatini has not had his finger cut off yet, but a number of striking parallels. And what we're seeing here, again, is the weaponization of Me Too. We're seeing that this weaponization is leading to the cancellation, the unjust cancellation of a number of men who, as it turns out, are innocent. Let's talk about what just happened. So what happened was one of his co-workers, this was not a student of his at the time, all right, but one of Dr. David Sabatini's co-workers at MIT and at an institute known as the Whitehead Institute. One of his coworkers there basically charged that he had coerced her into a sexual relationship that was not fully consensual, although she never actually claimed assault. So it's one of those squishy things, you know, that we're seeing more and more with Me Too, where you take the language and the language sounds bad, oh, coercion or whatever, right? And then you unpack it and it turns out we're talking about nothing, right? And also there was these accusations that she had made of harassment, and it turns out all of this was completely unfounded. But Sabatini was forced to resign. All right, so let's look at some of these texts. In the course of this, there have also been people who have been leaking things to this website, this Twitter site. It's called mTOR Leaks. Now, the mTOR is a reference to what David Sabatini was studying. I guess we should just start with the messages between Kristin Knouse and Sabatini. So let's look at these texts. I'm going to put this up on the screen, and the part in white is Dr. Kristin Knouse, and the part in black is Dr. Sabatini. You can see that she has a lot more to say than he does. So she says, I get anxious when I don't hear back from you, and then I see you post stuff on Twitter, and it provides an admittedly small and silly, but still another bit of evidence to this growing feeling that you don't care about me in the way that I care about you. I think I've been harboring but suppressing this sense of inequality and pain for a long time with adverse consequences for my focus, productivity, and happiness. She's long-winded like Amber Heard too, right? Look, I'm not going to come out and say it, but y'all know what I'm thinking. I've been thinking it with this case for a while, and it's a certain personality type we're talking about here, and they tend to go on and on trying to overrun people in conversations. She said, we saw that with Amber Heard. She said, I know you, okay, there's a break here. Next, I know you don't intend for this, and it may be entirely situational. I also know you don't want to deal with this right now, and I don't want to keep bothering you, but I also can't afford to or deserve to keep feeling like this. My only thought is for me to pull away and cut contact despite how much I want to be there for you. To which Sabatini replies, I am sorry, but you are... I'm sorry. He says, I am sorry, but you are being crazy. Now, look, Sabatini... let me just say, Sabatini is a brilliant scientist, and you can see that here in the inadequate way that he responds to this woman who was freaking out. Oh man, it's like a cliche, right, of the somewhat emotionally inept scientist, and that's no offense there because I'm in the same category. But yeah, here's just a word of advice to Dr. Sabatini: if you're trying to get a crazy person to calm down, Don't tell them that they're being crazy. You should read, you and everyone who wants to know how to deal with this personality type should read Stop Walking on Eggshells, and that will tell you how to deal with this type. Okay. So he says, I'm sorry you're being crazy. Between a day of meetings and jet lag, I found a minute to retweet a review. Please stop. And then she says, it hurt to be called crazy for trying to care and express how I feel, blah, 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 blah. Well, you can read the rest of this, all right? But the point is, nowhere is there any sense that it was not consensual. Now, you might say, well, okay, but that's at the end of the relationship, right? I want to know about the beginning. Maybe he pressured her at the beginning.
We can look at text exchanges now that have leaked out between them in which she says, shall I come by? Can be quick, yay or nay, no time to waste, leaving now, and then as the final tagline, hopefully you have condoms. Sounds very consensual to me. But this is not the way that she depicted their relationship when she complained to a faculty member, and this is when she was trying to get Sabatini in trouble now. She claims that she, quote, got sucked into being his friend, therapist, whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted it over the past several months, which I often had a hard time rejecting given the power imbalance. It got to be too much for me, so I asked for space. It was poorly received. So she's claiming that she was the one who asked for space and that he was the one who was pressuring her to stay with him, which is a complete lie and the opposite of what we know actually happened. Now, one of the just really shocking items that has leaked out is a text exchange between Kristin Knouse and a friend of hers in which she advises the friend to not take on Sabatini as a mentor or to, quote, squeeze out as much advice as possible before your mentor is Weinsteined out of science. And so we see her already laying the groundwork and laughing and joking about how she's going to Weinstein Sabatini out of there.
I want to also look here at these text messages where she basically tries to argue Sabatini out of dating a different woman and then seems at the end to kind of threaten him. Okay, and he keeps asking for space. Okay, so it's like the Johnny Depp thing, right? Sabatini keeps saying, I need more space. You'll notice this in the texts that are coming up. Sabatini keeps saying, I need more space, I need more space. He's very polite generally, but firm, and she just keeps on, right? Again, shades of those conversations that we heard between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. All right, so he says, I'm sorry, I'm skipping to his text. I'm sorry, but I just want some peace. Oh man, sounds like Johnny Depp. I told you where I am mentally, and your text did not help. You need to chill out and let fate take its course. Things with other woman have been interesting and fun. Yes, we have kissed and discussed more, but nothing has happened. And I need to spend more time with her to understand what we mean to each other, but unclear how that will happen unless I spend more time here. He's like trying to, like a scientist, like methodically, like spell it out. And it's just like, I'm sure he doesn't know. It's like totally missing the mark. She says, I appreciate you being honest. I'll be honest and say it definitely hurts to validate some of my anxieties in light of our closeness and discussions over the past few weeks, et cetera, et cetera. So then you can read this stuff for yourself, but if you continue through these texts, she just keeps arguing with him. And then she says, like, do you feel like she's smart enough for you, like I am, basically? So all of these ways she's trying to argue him out of seeing this other woman and out of basically like breaking up with her, which is fine, right? I'm not saying that's pathological, but I'm saying now what's pathological is that she's rewritten her narrative and is trying to get him canceled. So there's more of that. And then at the very end, she says here, look at the last text. This is after if you read the whole thing, it's after he said, I've got to go. And he says, of course, I understand, Kristin. I will always wish the best for you. That's his last message. I will always wish the best for you. And she says, the only certainty in your life now and forever is that you love your son and your lab more than anything else. Be careful not to abandon them. Despite your current mental state, take care. I guess there's several ways to read that, but since she hasn't mentioned the lab or the son up to this point, to me and to others, it reads like a kind of a threat, as if to say, okay, we're done, but you and your son and your lab are going to feel some consequences. And boy, they have. They have. Now, there's been allegations about retaliation or fears of retaliation. You know, this is one of the texts that Sabatini sent to her. even after their relationship had fallen apart. He said, lastly, next week is the final vote on your candidacy. I'm 100% sure it will be positive, and I will be there to lobby for you, although you don't need it as everyone is on board. I know that we have not interacted much lately, but after the final decision, we should, as I can give you many tips about MIT as a colleague, such as on teaching and bureaucracy. Safe travels. To me, this does not sound like any kind of retaliation. This sounds like well after the relationship had ended, and even after there had been some acrimony from her side, that he's saying, look, no fear. I'm going to be there to lobby for you, right? Now, it's not like her candidacy was in his hands or anything like that. No quid pro quo. But he's saying, yeah, I'm going to be there to support you. So whatever prestige he had as a senior professor at MIT, or as someone who was a star in his field, or as a former mentor to Kristin Knouse, that influence was not going to be used against her. There was no retaliation. There was no hint of retaliation. There was only support. And then her anger and clinginess and her retaliation when he did not wish to continue the relationship with her. I also want to show you a few other things that have leaked out. There have been letters from other professors, private letters that have leaked from other professors at MIT, in which some of these professors at MIT are pointing out the unjustness of the process whereby Sabatini had to leave. And some of the things that these professors say is basically, to paraphrase, like, hey, this was a shitty thing that was done here to this guy, right? It's shady. It can come back on our institution. It can come back on our department, huh? Maybe we need to rethink this. Maybe we need to have someone investigate this, talk about this. And then one of the professors even said in one of these private emails, that there are other people that we know of at MIT, even in our very department, I believe he said, who are guilty of infractions much greater than these supposed infractions of Sabatini sleeping with a colleague and not reporting it, right? Like it's interesting to see these. I'm going to put these up on the screen, but it's interesting to see these messages where people are being called out for this stuff.
I want to point out in this leaked email from Professor Bob Sawyer at MIT, in which Sawyer complains to MIT about the way that Sabatini has been treated, one of the things that he suggests is that Ruth Lehman, who was one of the main figures behind Sabatini's ouster, she might have violated MIT's policies on scientific misconduct by intimidating Sabatini's former students, into turning on him. So just one of the many fishy, problematic aspects of this.
And then another thing that I wanted to point out finally is that, if you saw my video, and again, I linked to it below, the video that I did during the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial when I took a little time off to focus on this Sabatini question. What you'll notice is that I talk about that at NYU, the situation at NYU, the disaster there, when some of Sabatini's friends who knew of his reputation and knew he was an amazing scientist, now without a job, when they tried to have him hired at NYU. And these people at NYU who were trying to have him hired were apparently privy to a number of these texts and emails, and they knew what the truth was. Plus, they had talked to a number of Sabatini's former students and knew that these accusations were BS. So they tried to do the honorable thing, and I want to call them out again. You have heroes like Daphne Bar-Sagai, who faced a lot of student criticism, still facing criticism, for trying to bring Sabatini to NYU. And then you have people like this guy, Benjamin Neal, who says, and this is a cancer researcher at NYU. He says, I can only say that NYU's due diligence, which was ongoing when disrupted by the mob, was extremely careful and thorough. But then again, some people still think facts and truth matter. Others believe in causes. So, once again, just like the situation with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, you have a bunch of people who jump to conclusions in the media, and then as it turns out, there's a whole other narrative of truth that is exposed through actual evidence like text and emails and that sort of thing. And so to me, this is just another situation where we see the kind of weaponization of Me Too, and not only in these celebrity cases like the Amber Heard, Johnny Depp situation, but in these situations in academia and in the sciences, where people's careers and lives can be ruined based on accusations, and then once the actual evidence comes out, oh gee, it's too late, your career's over. And who's gonna give that back? Who's going to give to Johnny Depp what he lost? And who's going to give to Dr. David Sabatini what he's lost? I'm going to be covering this from here on out, doing little updates on it and maybe longer videos. If you know anybody at these institutions, if you're an alumna of one of these institutions, maybe you should give them a piece of your mind, right? And I wish the best for Dr. David Sabatini. All right, everybody, as always, if you appreciate my work, like and subscribe, and the links are below for tips and donations. I do appreciate them, especially with these smaller cases that don't get the attention that they need, and I'm really going to be trying to shine a light on some of them, as well as doing lots of other kinds of videos, you know, the philosophy and the psychology and the movies and all that. Okay, bye, everybody. I would like to know, though, in the comments, should I be buying rapamycin from India?